Hello, everyone. This is Minding Our Mental Wellness with our mental health professionals. And we just enjoy and appreciate the chance to come to you and talk with you. And I'm the facilitator, Baruti Carl Alexander. I am not a mental health professional. So very quickly, I am going to turn it over to them and ask the question, what is counseling and therapy? How does it work? Can you share that, Jennifer?
What do you mean? How does it work? Like if we're talking about someone that's like going for the first time kind of thing, like what are we doing? What's the intentions?
Basically, all of that, but let's say I'm a person that has some issues with my marriage and with my kids. And
Okay.
I and somebody suggests to me, okay, you need to go get some counseling. And I say, okay, I'm gonna go. So
Mhm.
what is the process and what will that entail?
So to get started in therapy, of course, I think that's the best way to start is by finding what and who would be a good fit for you. So what you prefer. Okay. So a lot of people have preferences as a black therapist, right? Some people would prefer a woman of color or a male of color. Male or woman, male or female, that kind of thing, where you feel safe, where you can be heard and open, right? Now, I always tell people, finding a therapist is like finding the right pair of shoes, right? You order them online, they real cute online, right? And then you get them at home, and then you put them on your feet, and they just hurt real bad, even though they're your regular size. Then that might not be the shoe for you, so you can actually go back and return them and find another pair. So
Mhm.
that's another thing that's going to be important. Just being open to finding who fits you and your needs and what you're looking for
Mhm.
first.
Mhm.
And I
So
agree with I
it,
and I
it
agree with
just
you.
you got to find the right fit. But now, what if this person says, "Okay, I do not want to go to a therapist because people will think something wrong with me. I'm crazy." And if they just wanted to come and talk to you about their feeling,
Mhm.
how would you advise them if they said that in a conversation?
I probably would ask more questions personally. What gives you that impression? Is that because that's what was heard some years ago when you grew up? Because, that stigma is distorting, it's
Right.
painful and it's unrealistic. I mean, we all need support in some ways. And
Right,
uh,
absolutely.
it's even better when it's someone that can give you tools to manage whatever it is that you're having difficulties with. Also, someone that will not judge you. And we all have moments in our life where it gets difficult and we don't know how to move forward. That's
Right.
everybody. I've been to therapy before and I'll go again. It's necessary. So it doesn't necessarily mean that. It means
Mhm.
that you need a safe space that can teach you some tools, and that's not usually family or
Mhm.
someone that could has stock in your life that can be affected by those things to give you support
Mhm. I
without judgment.
just want to say, jobs today, I'd say even most jobs encourage their employees to go to therapy, and a lot of times it's built into the employee assistance programs and different things. So it's encouraged today, whereas before, maybe 20 years ago, it was not as encouraged
I agree.
as much. Um, I thank you for that, Sister Munirah. And I just want to give both of you a chance to introduce yourselves. Jennifer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. Of course. I am Jennifer Kane, owner of Adorn Counseling. Um, the meaning of Adorn Counseling, I don't know if I've ever said that, but it's counseling made beautiful. So, uh,
Very nice.
to fit whatever your needs may be, what you're looking for, and being your authentic self while doing it. I think that is my purpose in life. So I'm able to provide that support to my clients. I see people virtually, as well as face to face, and I have two other therapists that work with me, provide those services that are similar. But one speaks Spanish, so yeah, you can find me online by Googling Adoring Counseling.
Well, thank you very much. Sister Munirah, Dr. Deborah, please introduce yourself and then share about the conference that you just went to.
Okay. But I want to first speak to what Jennifer said. So I'm Deborah Wilson, and I am a therapist, and I train mental health professionals. So I teach in a graduate counseling program where I prepare individuals who are interested in journeying into the profession of counseling. Okay. And to answer your question about you and the issues you might be having with your family, and you want to go seek counseling, but it's this thought that, well, people will think there's something wrong with me. One of the things that research shows is that the benefit of counseling far outweigh the cost of not engaging in counseling. And as far as the African American community is concerned, there has over the years been a stigma associated with counseling, almost taboo, but over the years, I'll say over the past decade or so, that has been kind of waning, where people have come to realize that, well, it's okay for me to go and talk to somebody, because what we find is that by the time an individual gets to us as therapists, they've run out of resources. They've run out of girlfriends, boyfriends, family members, in terms of resolving what it is that they might be feeling and experiencing. And as far as the process is concerned, it's a give and take situation between a therapist and a client, because that's what it is. We're energy beings, we're human beings, right? And it's a change energy. And what Jennifer was saying is like a pair of shoes. You'll see it online and you'll order it. They look so pretty, and you bring them home, you try them on, and they just don't quite fit. And so it is with counseling, right? And one of the things that we stress in counseling is the establishment of rapport with our clients. And so the early stages of the therapeutic relationship between a therapist and an individual, or therapist and a family, is getting to know that person and them getting to know you. I don't have a large client base now, but when I accept a person, whether it's telehealth or face-to-face, I always let them know, this is what it is, this is what it's going to be like, and we'll make a decision after our initial meeting or two whether or not this is a good fit. Because we really want to know from a therapist perspective that we can be of service to this person. And if we feel that we cannot, then possibly refer them to somebody who can help them. So Jennifer mentioned she has Adorn Counseling, and there are other therapists there. Well, maybe they may not be able to work with Jennifer, but maybe it's somebody else in Jennifer's office who can help them out, right? Because it's all about how safe I feel with you in terms of me disclosing what it is that I'm feeling and experiencing at this time. And as she said, it can be a beautiful thing. right? And so I encourage anybody who might be going through something to, and who feel like they're in a situation where they really have nobody to speak to or to talk to reach out to a therapist, right?
Do you really see the change in the dynamic of the stigma that I talked about? It's a part of our economic system as far as employment. It's been added in many jobs. And that's a change from 20 years ago.
So what you're talking about is resources, right? Uh, and actually over the last 20 years, the availability of counseling has grown in our society because of different things that have happened. We've had natural disasters like Katrina and
Mhm.
Rita, Harvey, right? And whether you are impacted by any of these, now we've got Israel, where we've seen these images. We had COVID, we've gone through all of that. And so there are a number of things that have gone on in society that may exacerbate or add to whatever experiences a person was having prior to those. And whether or not you're directly impacted by any of those events that occurred, they have possibly a residual impact on how you're feeling. Because say you're depressed.
I think
So
maybe the internet, which basically happened maybe 20 years ago, has an impact on, because it's just so much more stress, so many more, I guess, issues that it creates, and the online impact of people having to have their personalities out online, and people could say a lot more things and get away with it, and they can hurt your feelings from a computer screen, and you still have to deal with it. Do you see that part, Jennifer?
No, definitely. There's a lot of emotional risk available at the disposal of your fingers and your eyes in the moment. And that's to people as little as 2 years old, because that's when they get a phone, right? And then that's when things are normalized, even though they're not, everyday occurrences, because that's what you see. That's what gives you uh, even confidence. If you did get a multitude of likes on something, then now I feel like I have to continue to get that same thing. It distorts our perception of reality, and that's one thing about Generation Z that they're open to. Um, Getting mental health care, because they recognize that their generation suffers from a lot from all of those influences and things of that nature, they're willing to get some support to manage how they are feeling. So that's the generation that I struggle with sometimes, but I recognize that that's an area that they're willing to work on, unlike any other generation before.
And you mentioned about people getting upset, not getting a like. That is a new thing that is new to this generation and so forth. We didn't have to deal with that when I was coming up, but it's very important. And there are kids and people who have committed suicide and different things that have come up because of what's happened online. And so it's very impactful. Do you see the same thing, Munirah?
Well, what I wanted to add is when you start talking about social media and internet and things like that, that's just an added stressor to an individual that might be feeling or experiencing a different thing. And one important thing that Jennifer mentioned was generational differences. And when we start talking about generational differences from a therapeutic standpoint, we're looking at the developmental aspect of different groups, say children, adolescents, young adults, right? Those emerging adults, we talked about that at the conference. Where from a developmental perspective, we had the 18 to 24-year-old. Well, that developmental stage now has been increased from 18 to 29. And they're saying now emerging adults.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nothing new necessarily, because one of the things that I observed and have included in my research agenda, so to speak, is where we have 18 years old and society is saying, well, they're grown, right? But an 18-year-old, that's when they need us most,
Mm-hmm.
right? Parents have a tendency to be influenced by external locus of control, that this person is grown now, you can put them out, they can handle it. But again, unless they've been really prepared from a young age, from a developmental perspective, once they reach that 18, it doesn't necessarily say, okay. And then it serves as a source of confusion, right? Because they say you're grown, but you can't drink, right? Can you drive at 18? You can drive when you're 18, but you have, so it's some conflicting things that go on in society. That's one of the things. And then from a generational perspective, we've got a whole couple of generations of children out there that had not experienced, say, what somebody dealt with in civil rights movements of the 60s and the 70s, right? Where there was separate but equal going on. Now, and there we start talking about identity and development of self, and where do I fit in the scheme of all of these things, right? Where society and social media and everything is telling you, well, you should have this, and you should be doing this, and you should be doing that. And when the individual finds themselves in a situation where that level of engagement in the society in which we all must coexist is not within reach of them, then they start experiencing what? Depression, anxiety, and different behaviors, because they're not really privy to, you know, all of the dynamics that's behind what's going on in the world that's being presented to them via social media. So social media then adds another level of stress to some already perhaps traumatized individuals.
I
So
just wanted to mention that we
yeah,
have several people joining us on Facebook, on our Facebook connection. And I've encouraged them, if they wanted to ask questions, to chime in with the questions, and I will relay them. Dr. Deborah, Sister Munirah, would you like to share about the conference?
oh, well, it's basically, well, first of all, it's, I got to show my shirt. Counseling Awareness Month is April. We celebrate it every year around this time to bring awareness to counseling and therapeutic matters, something that really matters a lot in the world in which we all coexist today. And it's really a professional development conference for mental health professionals, counselors, therapists. And so it was a really good, informative conference that we had. We had all of the disciplines represented this time. We had the president of the American Psychological Association. We had a representative from social work, and then of course, licensed professional counselors who were on the stage at one of the sessions. This was a closing session, and they talked about how we were all collaborating and the need for us to collaborate because we are actually experiencing a mental health crisis in America right now.
Understood, understood.
Yeah.
You felt it was very helpful?
Oh, absolutely. Very well attended. We had like 4,000 plus mental health professionals and all of the support organizations, um, uh, and accreditation agencies. We had state boards there, talking about, you know, what's going on, what we can expect, as far as, and advocacy was really stressed because of all of the changes that are going on now as far as DEI, right? So we're talking about diversity, inclusion, and help me out here, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. And so when we hear that, we immediately talk about or think about African Americans, but we're really talking about a whole slew of the population because what is going on is impacting everybody.
Most definitely.
Right. And so, yeah, it was a very informative conference that we had. So I'm sure everybody's energized from the conference, but it's a lot of work to do. And when I say that, we've got the legislative sessions that are now in play right now, and we're going to be having multiple state by state mental health day on the Capitol journeys, again, by state by state, so that we can advocate for clients and for the monies that's needed to
Understood.
to facilitate mental health intervention.
Yes, ma'am. I
Mhm.
wanted to ask Jennifer, you said you have found your purpose. When did you realize mental health or being a counselor and a therapist was your purpose? And what would you say to people who are thinking about, do I want to do something like that?
When I discovered, honestly, when I started being a therapist, there was this community mental health association with everything. So that's kind of like the Harris Center for Mental Health and places like that. That's where a lot of mental health professionals start. Just, that's how we get our feet wet in the industry and that type of thing. And I went to a lot of the community mental health agencies to provide services. And I noticed that it didn't align with what I believed was healthiest for my clients. And I didn't have much therapeutic control over much of anything of what I provide to them. And I worked in a crisis type situation where I really feel like I couldn't support the clients the way that they needed to, and it was so disorganized that I decided to go to practice on my own so that I can align with my ethical beliefs, and use different modalities of treatment. So there's different types of treatments for different types of mental health conditions or difficulties, and some are good for some people and there are others, but those types of businesses have a common goal and one type of way of doing things. And I'm not the traditionalist. So I really felt that I would thrive in a space that I could be myself authentically. I couldn't do that therapeutically then. When I went to school initially, I went to school and I wasn't going to be a counselor. I thought I was going to be a forensic psychologist. I wanted to understand why people committed crimes and things of that nature, but I wasn't interested in research and things of that nature. And when I started to meet people, and honestly, personally, my daughter's father she's 19 now, was mentally ill. He had bipolar disorder. And I was trying to understand how to help him. And how to just kind of deal with the things that he was dealing with, because he didn't really have the support that he needed. And that's what got me into the field. And then I recognized how I'm able to connect with people and build that rapport that Deborah was talking about. And my life changed. I wake up every day excited to go and do my work. It's such a blessing. So if you are looking to be a therapist, know that it's a lot of personal management and balance that's necessary to be effective. I think the education aspect also, it's a track you have to take, and then a test you have to take, and then like residencies and things of that nature, something like that. It's not specifically that, but similar, that you have to do. And then finding and trusting when you find and try different things to see what works, to be open to trying new things. And because nothing is one set way in this world, or in this, especially in this field, dealing with people and what they have to, seek support, or what they're seeking support with you. So one thing that I always make sure that I do is learn. I have to learn every day. If I don't, then I'm not going to be able to help anybody. I'm not going to be able to be effective, and I don't know it all. Nobody does. So I learn from my clients every day. If I recognize that I hadn't done, something that I should be doing, or I'm suggesting that they do and I don't, then I have to be intentional about doing that, and also being vulnerable enough to share that I don't. And I try to do that most of the time. I think that relatability is important too. Like, I think that's why people relate to me, because I'm my authentic self, my hair's purple, like I'm okay with being who I am, right? And a lot of times we try to meet the standard of society's expectation rather than ours, just what makes us feel safe and comfortable in who we are. So then I will also tell about personal life issues, because I hear all the time clients tell me, well, this is the first time that a therapist ever told me how she, what she goes through and what she feels, and mistakes they've made and things of that nature. And I'm like, I'm human too. And I don't want you to think that I'm sitting here reading from a book. I don't do that. But, to tell you how to live life. Life is real strong for all of us, especially in this day and age. And being able to be authentically who I am, as well as I learn from my mistakes, and then share that with others, is confirmation that I am in the right role.
I'm sure you are a great therapist with purple hair, and I mean that's just so authentic, and yeah, I'm referring you right now. It's a great thing. I can see the benefit of it, but it's still that thing. You're still a little scared, and I'm sure I'm speaking for people out there. They're still a little scared to take that step, and so forth. What would you say to them, Dr. Deborah Munirah?
Well, and a lot of times we might get a client that comes in and say, well, I've never had counseling before, but I decided that I would try it, right? In line with what Jennifer was saying, no one size fits all. We make no assumptions. We're not there necessarily to give advice, but to actually listen, right? Because a lot of times when a client comes to us, unless it's a mandated client, and even in those cases, sometimes what the issue really is, their
mandated client is somebody coming from the court.
The mandated, yeah, somebody that's
okay.
mandated to have therapy. But when they come in, a lot of times, if you're able to establish that rapport with them over the course of the therapeutic relationship, you'll find out, and they'll discover too, that really wasn't the problem at all. That what you presented initially was a symptom of something else that you're dealing with, unbeknownst to you. And to work with the client and to engage with them so that they develop that insight into what it really is that I'm experiencing is a wonderful thing, right? And so that's why it's really important to establish that rapport with them. They want to feel safe, as Jennifer said earlier. They feel like they're in a safe space. And then they're more open to share with you what it really is that they're dealing with. And unbeknownst to them, they sometimes find out that what they're experiencing is not minimizing what they're going through. That what you're going through is not unique or anything to necessarily be ashamed of at all, right? So,
Understood.
so and we are human. Sometimes when they're talking to you, you want to disclose, and we call it in counseling disclosure, self-disclosure, but you want to do it in an appropriate manner and at an appropriate time to let them know that we're all human beings, right? And we're all subject to feel a certain kind of way sometimes, right? Nobody's perfect, right? As TikTok or whatever may have you, if you been listening to the news lately, a lot of TikTok stars have really gone over in left field because this persona that they're trying to portray online is not them, right? They're putting something out there for clicks or likes or whatever, and can't contain themselves over time and eventually go off, right? While me, the naive person, looking at them saying, oh, I wish that was me. That's so great. That's so wonderful. And that's not really what the situation is in the first place, right? So going back to my original point that I was making, a lot of times we have clients that come to us and they might be feeling a certain kind of way and experiencing certain things. And if we're able to connect with them, we'll find out that this really is the situation. This is what's going on. And so, giving them a chance to process it and hopefully gain some insight, do a little introspection and gain insight from what it is that you all have been exchanging in terms of the energy and discussion and the therapeutic relationship is enough to exact change in them, right?
I want to ask this. I want to give several scenarios of potential clients who have issues, and how would you refer them, or would you take them on as a client yourself? Somebody who is very stressed out about, let's say, the war in the Middle East. They may have a background from that area. They're very stressed out about it, and they need somebody to talk to about it. How would you all refer that?
I mean, I would see that person. I specialize in anxiety and trauma, and that's what you just communicated. But
Okay.
to
All
speak
right.
back to
Okay.
what you were saying about starting therapy, though, because it was something that I wanted to share with you about that. Like you said, somebody being afraid to come to therapy in the first place. I think that'll be important to assess what the fear actually is. Is it that you don't want someone to know something that's personal about you? Is it because of that stigma? Is it because it's new and you just never did it before and you don't know what to expect? Because most of those things we are nervous about, right? And then if you really take a moment to consider what those fears are, then you can find a therapist looking on, your search to find who meets your needs. Or
In the instance that I was saying, this person is concerned about what everybody else will say, that they know that they need help, but they're so concerned about what everybody else will say that they are delaying are not doing what they know they probably need some help for. So
Okay.
that's the
So-
instance I'm talking about.
So one of the things that we do in counseling is we do an assessment. That's the very first thing that we do. And when I talk about establishing rapport, when that person presents themselves in for the session, we go through all of the confidentiality, right? We talk about our professional disclosures, you know, who we are, what our experiences are. So the very first thing that we determine when we get that call is whether or not what we do fits what it is that they're looking for, right? For instance, I don't work with children. So if you came to me and you're having problems with a 6 or a 7-year-old, then that's not my area of expertise. Okay, I might refer you to somebody. But if you come in and I find that you meet the criteria for the services that I provide, then once we get through all the paperwork as far as confidentiality, you understanding who I am in terms of my professional disclosure, then the next step is for us to do an assessment. And in this assessment, we talk about demographic information, cultural, family, social information. We do mental status exam. We might talk about your substance use history and things like that. Are you on any medication? What's your diet like? What's your relationships like? So we ask a lot of questions from a standpoint of, so our assessment of a client begins the moment they walk in the door or with that phone call, right? And once we get past the preliminaries, then we get into more formal assessment. And that person or family then is assessed throughout the therapeutic relationship, because again, what they initially came in for, once we really get into the talk, right? Once we really get into those sessions, then we might, again, some insight. The client may gain some insight into what, oh, okay, right?
How long does that assessment last? Maybe 3 sessions or?
Well, the assessment of the individual continues throughout the therapeutic relationship, but the initial assessment of that individual usually takes probably 1, 2, 3 max in terms of us really getting into some therapeutic work.
Does your assessment process kind of work the same, Jennifer?
Mine looks a little different because I'll have them do a lot of things virtually first. So
Mhm.
all those documents, the paperwork, I mean, I discussed them in the session, but they're already signed before they can even schedule one. And then there's a client history form, which answers some of those questions. And then the first session, I will go back over what they put. We talk about it so I can gain a better understanding of what the concerns are. Also, I send assessments, usually in regards to, at first, generalize for anxiety and what level you are, in regards to your anxiety levels, as well as depression, to see if that is the root issue, because that's the common, reason why people come to therapy. Then after that, I do the same thing that Dr. Deborah said. I just get to know them, get an understanding of a lot of history, and a lot of the times that's where it comes from. History, life experience, trauma histories, upbringings and expectations, all those things is what impacts us as adults. Normally is our childhood. And then, that all is that done, and maybe in the first 2 sessions in regard the clinical insurance wise. Now, this is the thing. I use insurance. I am not cash pay, and insurance requires certain things that aren't necessarily realistic, but it's only certain amount of throughout a year that we can do an assessment and we can bill for an assessment. So
Mhm.
that's only 2 for me. if using insurance. And then, but after that, we are, like Dr. Deborah said, always assessing certain things, because there's certain things you may not tell us and certain things you may not be comfortable with saying until you build that rapport. And then we'll have a better understanding of how we can help.
Can we do this? Can we give a ballpark picture of how much therapy costs if somebody's out there, they thinking about it, they they may have to do a copay with their insurance, or if they need to do, come out of pocket. How much are we talking about? Can we share that?
Well, I mean, the insurance you can't, because it's in each individual's plan. So and sometimes you have a deductible, you got to meet that first, so you got to pay the full amount. That type of thing. For cash rates, each therapist has their own rate. You can always search all of those things when looking for a therapist on Psychology Today. Most therapists have a Psychology Today profile with their rates, and it'll tell you like a range. So for an experienced therapist, it's going to be more cost more than a inexperienced therapist, or with less experience, right? So but I would say in general, between $100 to $200 per session
Understood.
in this
And
area.
one,
I'll say.
right.
Go ahead, Munirah.
And I always encourage, if you have a job and you're experiencing issues, use your EAP, because EAP pays for a certain number of sessions. Now, over the course of, usually it was like 3 to 5 sessions. Over COVID, they increased it to 10, and some, depending on the company, unlimited. But don't be ashamed or hold back because you can't afford it if you have a job, because EAP is available through most employers with more than X number of employees within
Very
their
much so.
organizations. And I do a lot of EAP referrals, and it works. You have some individuals, all they need is maybe 2 or 3 sessions. But then there are others, like Jennifer mentioned, because of managed care, you're limited in how often you can see the client, because at some point they're going to say, okay, you're going to have to pay for this, right? So through managed care, you might get 8, 10 sessions, and then after that, you're on your own, right? Because it was a federal mandate some years ago that said, okay, if you've got X number of employees, you are going to have to include mental health insurance, right? And that's where EAP really kicked in, right? So that if you're having problems, okay, call HR and find out or look in your benefits package and see if you have an EAP. Confidential, right? They don't have to know about it. You go to your benefits books, find out if you got EAP. If you do, you make the call. Doesn't have anything to do with your employer. They'll pay for it, but that's a benefit, just like you going to the doctor and getting your yearly checkup. So don't hold back or
It's also available
neglect
for
your. Go ahead.
families.
What'd you say, Jennifer?
I'm just saying it's also available for families, because
Yes.
families can use their like, if it's a teenager or a
Right.
young adult and they're on their parents' insurance, or they live in a home with their parent and things like that, they can use their parents' EAP too.
Right, absolutely. And when I say we're in a mental health crisis, while they're saying they're adding Medicare, they're also cutting Medicaid, right? And so that's kind of quiet lately, but Medicaid is being cut in terms of mental health services. That's why advocating by, LPCs and other mental health professionals going and doing the mental health day on the Capitol is important. All of our major organizations that support social workers, counselors, psychologists have a legislative lobbyist right there in Washington, D.C. that goes on the federal level, but we also have state level who manages the funds that come down from the federal government in terms of providing funds that will allow for the various mental health interventions. And
We are
so,
almost at the end of our show. We've talked about a lot. I want to just share this final tidbit or talk about this crisis. Young Black men, which is the backbone of our community, they are in a crisis, and a lot of them don't even realize. I have a young son. He's a part of that crisis. And the difficulty is that anybody, you got to go through steps. You can't just start at the beginning. But their nature, their power, their strength, they don't want to go through steps. It's very difficult for them to sacrifice it, to wait, and to go through, and they're not feeling important. They gotta have to wait, and they have to go through and delay their gratification and all of that. How can we find ways to encourage them? If you had young men in your practice who came in who were going through a difficult process, they had violent tendencies, different things, how would you encourage them? What can you tell them? Jennifer.
Support is what we all need, and acceptance to
exactly, that's
fulfill in this
exactly right.
world.
Exactly.
And if you don't feel comfortable going to the support that you do have, whether that be a partner, your family, your church, or whatever, mental health services can help guide you through that, because the way the world looks now and the expectations of it on that community, on all of our communities, honestly, now, it's detrimentally painful, because it's not realistic, and it's a lot of change. And change causes crisis. And I think that is what, I know that's what the mental health crisis that Dr. Deborah's referring to is regarding the change. Everything has changed in our lives. And now we're trying to find that space to, one, have the motivation to find what works, and two, to accept that it actually changed so significantly, and then to feel powerful in some way, or empowered to be able to adjust to that change. And that is what mental health care can do, because it can help support you with giving you options that work for you, not us, not what we think. We help you find what works for you, and identify what hasn't been working, that you still continuously repeating based on how your upbringing most of the time.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
and that individual,
If he's angry all the time, he's upset because he can't express himself. He expresses himself, he gets in trouble, because he got all this power and energy and so forth, but the world is telling him to calm down and so forth. How would you advise him? What's being asked of him is going against how he feels.
But realistically, I wouldn't know that until I get an understanding of who he is and what he grew up like. I can't really.
Assessment comes in.
Right. I can't really say what I would tell him. I mean, I can empower somebody, but you can say a whole bunch of positive things and then not make a difference to someone, right? But if I understand you and I can connect with you, then I can give you some tools and help you find what works for you to be able to have the outcomes. Because it sounds like if you're angry all the time and you're self-medicating in some way, then you're not going to be living a functional life. You can't function in society that way. I mean, if you're angry, then that means your relationships are damaged, because ain't nobody gonna deal with that all the time. You always just, going off on me and I ain't even do nothing because you feel disempowered in some way. That is the root of, I think, importance of people to identify. If you are recognizing that your relationships have changed, if you recognize that you're angry. Anger is a secondary emotion. Usually it's something that comes before that. So it's hurt, confusion, disappointment, whatever else. And but again, that's something that therapy helps you identify, because a lot of the times our our caregivers or whatever else don't really address their mental health. So how can they give that to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And
How,
so,
you know, so it is important to have someone that can give you those tools without judgment, but also just to have a voice in the spaces where you feel voiceless, because that's probably where that anger began.
mhm, mhm.
We have so many young men. It didn't used to be where you see young men in their 20s to 25 out on the street. But you go to any large city, you see that now, much more so. It used to be just older men, but now it's young men too. So our crisis is growing. And you were going to say, Munirah?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I was good.
Yeah,
I was
but
just
it
gonna,
is
I was gonna,
very much
one
of
of
a
the things
crisis.
that I wanted to
Go ahead.
agree with Jennifer on is none of us exists in isolation.
Hmm.
We all
Not guilty either.
need other people. If we were meant to exist alone, we would all look alike, move alike, just like this Starbucks just opened up by my house. And it's a line in that surrounded that Starbucks like robots. Okay. Like they opened it and said, okay, now get in line.
Hmm.
Everybody's doing the same thing. Now, what does that have to do with anything? But my thing is that we all need a group or a support system. And one of the things that I always emphasize as I'm working with the client is, what about your support system? Who, and some people can't identify it, but if you work with them long enough, they'll come up with somebody that they connect with, that's a source of support for them. And it may not be the way that they want it to be,
Most of the time, not.
right? But they come to realize that they do need other people,
Yep,
right? Because we all do.
we do.
We need other people. And then that extends to, we need to be a part of a group. I don't care where you are, where you go. You can move to the other side of the world, but you still need a group to interact with
Mm-hmm.
in order for you to survive and thrive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because otherwise you'll be in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be stressful and lead to other things.
And what I've seen is the biggest thing young Black men got to understand is how to go through steps and to delay the gratification. And it's difficult, but it's necessary. And a support system, which in a lot of Black homes has been disrupted. The father's not there. A lot of times they don't have a significant other. And so they don't have that, they don't see that process of their father going to work and going through the steps every day that they have to do to survive. So they may not have those particular things, but they need to learn them to survive. And that's what I'm talking about. We are at the end of our show. I just want to say thank you to our two professionals. Our next show, I believe, will be May 11th. I double check, but I believe it'll be May 11th. And this is we have a lot of people out there checking us out. And if you have questions, either now or later, please share with us, and I will get them to the professionals and let them comment. A final statement, Sister Jennifer?
Yeah, nothing changes and nothing changes. Meaning, if you see something not working and doing the same thing and expecting a different response, that is the definition for insanity. And if that's what you're doing, you might need some support to learn how you can do something different and get better outcomes. And that's where therapy comes in. I think if you find a good fit for you, and that's just not giving up if the first one isn't. That's another thing too. And identifying what it is that you know that's not working in advance so that you can read up about whoever that you're seeking support from. Then you can move towards the best version of you. But if you keep doing the same thing, you won't. And it's okay to have non-judgmental support. And yeah, like I said earlier, you can reach me just by Googling Adoring Counseling or my name, Jennifer Kane, LPC. My office is in South Houston. There's another lady in the Woodlands area with the same name, but you'll know me because my hair is purple. But yeah, I'm so glad to be here today to hopefully just give some knowledge and some information on how you can be the best version of yourself by finding what works and talking to someone to gain an understanding about you, your history, and all that good stuff. I promise you, it'll move you towards the best you.
Well, thank you very much. Blessings, blessings. Dr. Deborah?
Well, I'll, excuse me, I'll just end by saying again what I said earlier, that the benefit of seeking counseling and engaging in counseling far outweighs the risk of not getting counseling. And so you might discover something about yourself. And so look Jennifer up, or I see, and I want to pose a challenge to those other LPCs that are out there watching. Perhaps we can have a panel discussion, and I'll lead the discussion. Right, Mr. Alexander, I'll lead the
Yes,
discussion.
ma'am.
And I'd like to talk to these therapists about their finest hour.
Yes, ma'am.
It's at being therapists, and maybe that will be an encouragement for someone who had been struggling with it or thinking about it. And when I say it, entering into a therapeutic relationship, maybe listening to these therapists talk about their finest hour will encourage them to seek
Well, that's
out one of these therapists in order to work through whatever it is they may be experiencing.
well, we're going to continue to bring our show, our mental health discussion to the community. We're going to be working on it Sundays. As I mentioned, the next show will be May 11th, unless Dr. Deborah says we're going to have another day. And we appreciate it. Any final comment?
No, you get you some therapy. I promise you it'll help.
Well, thank you all very much.
And we're here
We will
for
be in
you.
touch. Yes, ma'am, Dr. Deborah?
I said, and we're here for you.
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time on Minding Our Mental Wellness. Thank you.